You keep telling yourself you're chill, but your phone tells the truth. Your stomach drops when they leave you on delivery. You reread your own texts to see if you said too much. You promise yourself you'll stop checking their story, then you're back on Instagram, zooming in on who's in the background. It doesn't feel like preference, it feels like oxygen. Here's the uncomfortable reality: you're treating attention like a basic need instead of what the Stoics would call a preferred indifferent. Not garbage, not meaningless, just not the thing your peace of mind should depend on. When attention becomes a need, you start negotiating your boundaries, your sleep, your schedule, even your values just to keep it flowing. In this lesson, we're going to flip that. By the end, you'll have a simple way to think about attention that removes pressure instead of adding it. You'll have a 4-hour delay practice that breaks the cycle of instant, anxious responses. And you'll have a way to quietly test whether attraction actually grows when you stop overgiving your time, your texts, and your energy. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. The Stoics talked about things like money, status, and health as preferred indifferent, good to have, but not the foundation of who you are. Attention sits in that same category. It's fine to want it, enjoy it, and even prefer more than less. The trouble starts when you slide one mental step over and start acting like you'll break without it. When you do that, you hand over the remote control of your mood to whoever answers your messages. Think about how this plays out in North American life. You finish work and tell yourself you'll decompress, but your real evening routine is scrolling to see who liked your post. You say yes to dates you're not excited about just to avoid a quiet Friday. You leave your read receipts on, hoping they'll see you saw their message and feel something. None of this is evil, it's just expensive. It costs you focus, sleep, and self-respect. As Marcus notes in Meditations 5.20, the one thing that is always yours is how you respond. You don't control when they text, who views your story, or how many people swipe right. You do control how you label those things in your mind. Call attention a need, and every slow reply becomes a threat. Call it a nice to have, and the same delay becomes data, not an emergency. So here's what we're going to do together. First, you'll learn how to mentally downgrade attention from need to preferred indifferent so your nervous system stops treating silence as danger. Next, you'll build a daily baseline that makes you less available for attention gambling in the first place. Then, you'll practice a 4-hour delay that slows your reactions, increases your attractiveness, and gives you room to think. After that, you'll learn how to use your calendar and small no decisions to signal your standards without drama. Finally, you'll walk through a simple real-life story, see these pieces in action, and get 3 concrete steps you can do today. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. The first move is simple to say and hard to live: start calling attention a preference, not a need. When you change that label, you stop letting other people's responses decide how safe, wanted, or valuable you feel. This matters because your behavior always follows what you quietly believe you need to survive. Why this works: your brain reacts differently to "I like this" than to "I'll be ruined without this." When you treat attention like air, your body goes into threat mode every time you don't get a quick hit. Heart rate goes up, thoughts race, and you start planning rescue missions in your head, double texting, over-explaining, chasing. When you treat attention like good weather, welcome but not mandatory, you can stay steady even when the sky looks cloudy. Over time, this calmer baseline actually makes you more attractive and easier to be around. Here's one line you can use: attention is optional, respect is non-negotiable. Say it to yourself before you open your phone, not to the other person. You're setting a rule for your own nervous system: I don't chase optional things at the cost of essential things. Picture this. You're in Chicago, it's a Tuesday night, and someone you like from Hinge finally texts back after 2 days. Before now, you'd feel a rush of relief, fire off an eager paragraph, and maybe joke about them disappearing. Underneath, you'd be thinking, please don't leave again. Tonight, you see the notification, and you pause. You silently repeat, attention is optional, respect is non-negotiable. You remember that during those 2 days you still worked out, handled your job, talked to your friends, and cooked your own dinner. You didn't crumble. You take a breath, finish the email you're writing, and only then decide whether you even feel like answering. When you do respond, you keep it simple, kind, and not rushed. The entire interaction shifts because you changed the label in your head. Tiny action: write attention is optional, respect is non-negotiable in the Notes app on your phone and set it as the first item in a favorites folder. Every time you're tempted to overcheck or overtext today, open that note first, read it once, and only then decide what to do. Next, you need a life that can run just fine without bonus attention. The more empty space you leave in your days, the more room you create for craving and anxiety to grow. When your schedule is wide open, the slightest reply from someone feels like the main event. Your goal is not to be busy for show, but to be anchored in things you control so you're not waiting around for your phone to light up. This works because humans handle uncertainty better when part of their environment is stable. If your work blocks, workouts, meals, and basic routines are predictable, then unpredictable attention doesn't rock you as hard. Stoic writers like Seneca emphasized having your own inner household in order so external events couldn't easily shake you. In modern terms, a calendar filled with self-directed commitments lowers the emotional price of someone else's inconsistency. Here's a line you can use for yourself: my day runs on my plan, not on their replies. You're not announcing this to anyone, you're reminding your brain that texts, calls, and likes get to fit into pre-existing slots, not dominate the entire layout. Imagine you live in Toronto and you're casually dating. Before, you might keep your Friday evenings open just in case someone you like suggests plans. You tell your friends, "I'm free whenever," secretly hoping that flexibility will make you more appealing. In practice, you end up at home, scrolling and comparing yourself to couples on TikTok. After you adopt this new frame, you decide that Friday nights are for things you control, maybe a 6 p.m. gym session, a 7:30 dinner you plan with a friend, or even a solo movie. If someone texts at 5 p.m. asking to see you, you check your schedule instead of your feelings. You might say yes if it fits, or you might say, "Tonight doesn't work, but I'm free Sunday afternoon." You're no longer offering your entire life as a blank canvas for their attention. Tiny action: tonight, block off 2 hours on your calendar for activities you control completely, no screens, no waiting on replies. Treat that block as non-negotiable, the same way you treat a job interview or an important meeting. Now we add friction where your anxiety usually adds speed. The practice: when you feel the urge to respond out of panic, you delay for 4 hours. Not to play games, not to punish anyone, but to separate your action from your adrenaline. The change you're making is this: you respond when you're grounded, not when you're flooded. Why this works: urgency and attraction don't mix well. When you respond instantly from fear, your messages carry a subtle "please reassure me" energy. People feel it, even if they can't articulate it. A 4-hour delay breaks the circuit. It gives your nervous system time to come down so you can respond from preference, not desperation. It also quietly signals that you have a life, you're not sitting by the phone, refreshing message like it's your job. Here's the line you use with yourself: if it still matters in 4 hours, I'll answer calmly. You're not saying this to them. You're telling your own brain, we're not making decisions while we're spinning. Picture someone in Seattle, sitting on their couch after work. They see a text from a person they've been seeing: "Hey, not sure this is working. You seem a little intense." Before, they'd instantly start typing a long defense, explaining every behavior, maybe apologizing for things that aren't wrong. Instead, they stand up, put their phone face down, and say out loud, "If it still matters in 4 hours, I'll answer calmly." They go for a walk, cook dinner, call a friend, and watch an episode of a show. Their anxiety spikes and falls a few times, but by the time they check the message again, they can see more clearly. Maybe they decide they don't want to convince someone who calls them intense after 3 dates. Maybe they send a short, grounded reply like, "Thanks for being honest. I'm looking for a better match too. Take care." Either way, they make a choice from composure, not panic. Tiny action: choose one conversation today, romantic, work, or social, where you feel that familiar urge to answer immediately for fear of losing someone's attention. Instead of responding, set a 4-hour timer on your phone. Don't open the thread again until it goes off, and only then write back from a calm state. Attention also shows up in your calendar. Every time you reshuffle your day to accommodate someone else's last-minute request, you're telling yourself, "Their attention is more important than my plans." The change here is to stop auto-prioritizing other people's time over your commitments. You can still be flexible, but the default needs to be, my schedule matters. This works because boundaries are learned through repetition. When you regularly cancel your plans to squeeze in a call, a drink, or a favor, your nervous system learns that your life is negotiable. That breeds resentment and neediness at the same time. By insisting that plans you've already made are real, you send a quiet message to yourself and others: you're not an on-demand entertainment service. Over time, this makes the attention you do give more valuable and more respected. Here's a simple line you can use when someone asks for something that cuts into your plans: I've already got something on the calendar then, but here's a time that works. You're not over-explaining, you're not apologizing for having a life, you're just stating a fact and offering an alternative. Imagine you're in Austin and a person you like texts at 7 p.m. on a Friday. What are you up to? Want to grab a drink? An hour ago, you committed to going to a friend's birthday or just having a quiet reading night to decompress from a long week. The old pattern is to drop everything. Sure, I can be there in 20. You arrive slightly annoyed at yourself, over-invested in how the night goes, and hyper-aware of any sign they're not as into it as you are. This time, you glance at the message and check your calendar. You reply, I've already got something on the calendar tonight, but I'm free Sunday evening if you want to plan ahead. Maybe they say, cool, let's do Sunday. Maybe they don't. Either way, you walk into your existing plans feeling aligned instead of resentful. You're showing yourself that you're not waiting around as a backup plan. Tiny action: for the next 7 days, before you say yes to any last-minute invite, physically look at your calendar. If you have anything planned, even practice saying, I've already got something on the calendar then, and suggest a different time instead of instantly rearranging. Another way you treat attention like a need is by saying yes to things that drain you just to stay visible. You answer late-night calls when you're exhausted. You keep talking to someone you're not actually attracted to because they text consistently. You tolerate small disrespect because you're afraid of going back to silence. The shift is to let small no decisions protect your energy instead of trading it for crumbs of validation. This works because standards are communicated more by what you refuse than by what you accept. When you keep engaging with people who disrespect your time or your boundaries, you're training your brain to settle. When you start letting low-quality attention die instead of feeding it, you free up emotional bandwidth for better relationships and for yourself. Over time, your sense of self-worth stops being tied to how many people happen to be orbiting you. Here's one line you can use when someone keeps pushing past your stated limits: that doesn't work for me. No justification, no thesis statement, just a clear boundary. You can add, I'm going to step back, if you need to, but you don't have to explain your full interior world. Picture someone in New York who's been talking to a person that only texts after midnight. They've tried hinting, joking, even answering with sleepy selfies, secretly hoping the timing would change. It doesn't. One night at 12:30 a.m., the same "you up" message appeared. Instead of replying, they wait until the next day at noon and send, that doesn't work for me. I'm looking for something more intentional, so I'm going to step back. Then they mute the thread. There's a pang of loss, the routine of those late-night pings disappears, but there's also relief. Within a week, their sleep improves, their mornings feel less foggy, and they notice they're less tempted to check their phone every 5 minutes. They've proven to themselves that they can live without that particular stream of attention. Tiny action: think of one recurring situation where you keep accepting low-quality attention: a late-night text, a last-minute hang, a one-sided DM. The next time it happens, use the sentence, that doesn't work for me, and if needed, add, I'm going to step back, then hold the line. Your digital habits can turn attention into a slot machine. Every refresh of Instagram, TikTok, or your messages is a pull of the lever. Maybe there's a notification, maybe there isn't. That unpredictability keeps you hooked. The shift here is to stop gambling with attention by creating fixed check-in windows instead of endless, impulsive checking. This works because your brain is especially sensitive to variable rewards. When you check your phone at random times and sometimes see something exciting, your brain learns, keep checking, something might be there. By giving yourself set times to look, like 2 or 3 specific windows a day, you remove the casino element. You still get to enjoy connection and interaction, but you're no longer living in a state of constant waiting. Here's a line you can use: I check on my schedule, not on my cravings. Again, this isn't a line you send, it's a rule you whisper to yourself when your hand reaches for the phone without permission. Imagine you're in Vancouver, working from home. Your phone is on the desk, face up, lighting up every few minutes with Slack pings, news alerts, and friend group chats. You're also waiting for a reply from someone you've been dating. Normally, you'd pick up your phone every time it buzzes, and on quiet stretches you'd grab it anyway, just in case. Today, you decide you'll check messages at 3 times, 11 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. You flip your phone face down and move it slightly out of reach. At 10:05, you feel the itch. Your brain says, what if they texted back? You answer with, I check on my schedule, not on my cravings, and keep typing your email. At 11 a.m., you take a proper break, check everything, enjoy your replies, and then put the phone down again. By the end of the day, you've done more deep work, and the absence or presence of a single message doesn't control your mood. Tiny action: choose 2 or 3 specific times tomorrow when you'll check messages and social media. Write them down somewhere visible. Outside those windows, when you feel the impulse to check, say, I check on my schedule, not on my cravings, and return to whatever you were doing. So far you've downgraded attention from need to preference, built a more solid day, added a 4-hour delay, defended your calendar, and stopped gambling with your phone. Now you're ready for a quiet experiment. What happens to attraction when you stop overgiving? The adjustment here is subtle. You keep showing up with warmth and respect, but you stop being the one who carries 80% of the effort. This works because humans often value what they invest in. When you do all the planning, all the texting, all the emotional labor, the other person doesn't have to risk much. They don't build attachment in the same way. By pulling back to a more balanced level of investment, you create space for them to either step in or fade out. Either outcome gives you clarity without a fight. Here's a line you can use as a personal rule: if I'm doing more than half the reaching out, I pause. You're not trying to match moves perfectly, you're just watching the ratio. When you notice you're carrying most of the contact, you stop adding more weight. Picture someone in Denver who has been texting a person they met at a friend's barbecue. For weeks, they've been the one starting nearly every conversation, suggesting plans, sending memes, asking follow-up questions. The other person responds, sometimes enthusiastically, but rarely initiates. Normally, this person in Denver would keep pushing, thinking, if I stop, it'll all disappear. Now, they decide to test the ratio. They look back through the thread and see that out of the last 10 starts, 9 were theirs. They say to themselves, if I'm doing more than half the reaching out, I pause. For the next week, they don't start anything. They respond when contacted, kindly but not urgently, and then wait. Maybe the other person begins to initiate, showing clear interest. Maybe the thread goes quiet. Either way, this person gets an honest answer without one more begging text. Tiny action: open one message thread where you feel unsure about the other person's level of interest. Count the last 10 conversation starts and see who initiated. If you've started more than half, commit to a 7-day pause on initiating and just observe what happens. Finally, you need a way to measure your progress that isn't how many people are texting me right now. The change here is to judge your growth by internal metrics: how quickly you calm down after silence, how often you keep your plans, how many times you choose your standards over panic. You shift from tracking external signals to tracking your own behavior. This works because external outcomes lag behind internal changes. You can be doing everything right, honoring your calendar, respecting your own time, responding from calm, and still go through stretches of fewer dates, fewer likes, fewer invitations. If you use those numbers as your only scorecard, you'll slide right back into neediness. When you track actions you control, you stay grounded even when the external data looks flat. Here's a line you can use: my score is how I behave, not how they respond. It reminds you that your job is to show up as a person you respect, not to engineer other people's reactions. Imagine someone in Atlanta who's been putting all these practices in place. For the first 2 weeks, their dating app matches actually go down because they're swiping less and being more selective. They would panic and think, I'm getting less attention, I must be doing something wrong. New them keeps a simple, private log at the end of each day: did I keep my calendar commitments? Did I let low-quality attention go? Did I use the 4-hour delay at least once when I felt anxious? Some days, they hit all three. Some days, they miss. But after a month, they notice their average anxiety score is lower, they sleep better, and they feel less scattered at work. Eventually, better matches show up, but the real win is that their mood no longer rides the roller coaster of random replies. Tiny action. Tonight, write down 3 behaviors you can control related to attention, like keeping plans, using a delay before responding in panic, and refusing low-quality contact. For the next 7 days, give yourself a daily score from 0 to 3 based on how many you did, and ignore external metrics while you're running this experiment. Let's put this into a single North American story so you can see how it fits together. Meet Jordan, a 29-year-old in Minneapolis working in marketing. For years, Jordan's dating life has been a cycle of brief, intense flings that burn out fast. The pattern is simple: Jordan meets someone on Bumble, feels instant chemistry, and immediately starts pouring in effort, good morning texts, long voice notes, last-minute meetups, late-night calls. When the other person pulls back even slightly, Jordan spirals. One Sunday, after a weekend of refreshing a thread that went from constant to quiet, Jordan stumbles on the idea that attention is a preferred indifferent, not a need. That line alone feels foreign. They realize that they've been acting as if texts are oxygen. Jordan decides to experiment. First, they adopt the sentence, attention is optional, respect is non-negotiable, and write it on a sticky note by their laptop. Every time they reach for their phone, they glance at it. The effect isn't magical, but it introduces a question: is what I'm about to do respectful to myself? Next, Jordan looks at their week. Evenings are mostly empty, just in case someone wants to hang out. They block off Monday and Wednesday nights for a class at the gym and Thursday for drinks with a friend they've neglected. When a new match suggests a same-night meetup, Jordan sees the text during a break, feels the old temptation to cancel the gym, and instead replies, "I've already got something on the calendar tonight, but I'm free Saturday afternoon if that works." The match agrees. Jordan walks into the workout proud instead of hollow. On Saturday, the date goes well. Afterward, Jordan feels the urge to send a long recap text and lock in a second date immediately. The anxiety hums: if you don't move fast, they'll lose interest. Jordan decides to use the 4-hour delay. If it still matters in 4 hours, I'll answer calmly. They set a timer, put their phone in another room, and start doing weekend chores. By the time the timer goes off, the neediness has faded. They send a short message: had a good time today. If you'd like to do it again, I'm open to planning something next week. Then they leave it. Over the next few days, the new person initiates twice. Jordan notices that in their past pattern, they would have started 8 conversations in that same span. They remember the rule: if I'm doing more than half the reaching out, I pause, and let the ratio stay balanced. At the end of each day, Jordan tracks their behaviors. Did I keep my plans? Did I pause when I felt panicky before texting? Did I say that doesn't work for me at least once where needed? The scoreboard becomes a small evening ritual. 2 weeks later, something subtle has shifted. Whether or not this specific connection becomes a long-term relationship, Jordan's self-respect is higher. They sleep better because they're not answering late-night messages, their work improves because they're not checking their phone every 10 minutes, and their dates feel less like auditions and more like conversations between equals. The attention they receive hasn't vanished, but its power to control them has. You've seen how treating attention as a need turns your phone into a fight for survival, and how reframing it as a preference, what the Stoics would call a preferred indifferent, takes the edge off. You've learned to anchor your days in things you control so you're not waiting around for pings, to use a 4-hour delay so you don't respond from panic, to protect your calendar and your sleep, to say that doesn't work for me when low-quality attention shows up, to stop gambling with endless checking, and finally to measure progress by your behavior instead of other people's reactions. Together, these moves turn you from a person chasing validation into someone others naturally respect and are drawn to. Now it's your turn to act, not just nod along. Step 1. Pick one conversation where you feel anxious about replies and practice the 4-hour delay once in the next 24 hours. Set a timer, walk away, and only respond when it goes off. Step 2. Block off at least 2 hours this week for activities you control completely, add them to your calendar, and refuse to move them for last-minute attention. Step 3. Choose one recurring low-quality contact and send a simple, clear line, that doesn't work for me. I'm going to step back, then mute or archive the thread and see how your body feels after 48 hours. If you want to go deeper after this, the next lesson to watch is the one where we break down clear texting boundaries, how often to message, what to do when someone pulls back, and how to protect your focus without playing games. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next lesson.